Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to zsah's webinar session. I'm Nina Cheng. I am the marketing manager at zsah. It is my pleasure to meet you all in this webinar. We are happy to have David Kennedy, our cybersecurity expert and commercial director at zsah, here to discuss how to minimize cybersecurity risks for public sector in the age of digital transformation. This session is designed to be interactive, so don't be shy and feel free to send any questions at any time through the Ask section on your control panel. David will answer all the questions you have after his presentation. So now let's welcome David.
Thank you, Nina. Well, good afternoon, everybody. And so I just suppose by way of introduction, introduce myself, as it were. I'm only going to talk about points 2 a little bit. I have been in the IT security industry for more than 30 years and dealing with the public sector for probably nearly 20 years of that. I'm one of those strange people that loves PKI, loves talking about encryption and security in general. And the last point, point 5, yes, I do like classic minis, and I do talk about them a lot, or as the owner of zsah says, Amir Hashmi, he says, don't ask him about anything, because he will in fact talk a lot about anything. That's just very briefly by way of a brief introduction. So moving on, based on a survey of kind of 900 people recently across multiple sectors on a global basis, talking to the government sector about their digital transformation plans, is they have been surprised by the speed and success of their digital initiatives in response to COVID. The average, as they say, is accelerated by 7 years. In fact, the CEO of Microsoft, back in his April 2020 earnings call, said that they had experienced 2 years of digital transformation in 2 months. And just by way of an interesting statistic, is back then, Microsoft had more than 200 million team meetings in a single day. I think that prior to COVID, we wouldn't have imagined these sorts of numbers. And during the same survey, respondents also said that they were 3 times more likely to say that 80% of their customer interactions were now digital in nature, and they have seen a notable change in consumer behavior in the shift to online channels. And customers have now warmed to e-commerce for everything, and they now expect everything to be available all of the time. So despite legacy constraints in the public sector, this digital transformation is meant to improve their engagement with citizens. But it really is, it's a tough task for the public sector to overhaul old inefficiencies, legacy IT infrastructure, while maintaining social distancing for those organizations where they actually still have to be working from the office or remote working with limited resources. But they still have to go through the process, and there are several fundamental foundation stones to digital transformation that are enabling this. So there's cloud, data analytics, defensive cybersecurity, and mobility. I think historically there was a reluctance to adopt the cloud many years ago, with many citing security concerns. But I think that most of these have been laid to rest, as we've seen tremendous growth in both public and private cloud providers within the UK sector. There's an increasing recognition that data is a critical and underutilized asset in government, with data analytics itself offering opportunities to deliver insights on citizens and enable evidence-based decision making, which hasn't been available in the past. But one of the areas that's probably been most undisturbed is that of mobility. And with mobility, we're not just talking about connectivity from mobile phones, but it's enabling those channels to allow citizens to get access to the capabilities and applications that the public sector is offering to them. The public sector recognizes that transformation can have huge long-term savings and huge effectiveness gains once it's been implemented. But digitizing the way that we do things historically has only got limited benefits. So it's undertaking fundamental digital transformation can remove a lot of the inbuilt unnecessary processes and procedures and can deliver greater effectiveness in terms of a better citizenship or better citizen experience. Spending through COVID and all the stimulus packages that are going on at the moment is going to result in spending controls towards the end of this year and beyond. And unfortunately, the need to digitize and spend less could be seen as conflicting priorities. And what we need to address in the short term is to address the shortcuts that might be taken from digitization, where we are leaving cybersecurity vulnerabilities that need to be addressed now. Local services, according to the UK government websites, it says that local services will be facing a 7.8 billion funding gap by 2025. And it's imperative that councils and the medical services that fall under their remit are able to deliver the services that citizens expect. They expect the same experiences from public services that they get when ordering a takeaway or ordering an Uber. And this is, these are the things that the citizens are now expecting. So we have to be cognizant of all these facts in terms of delivering better services moving forward. Just to give you some idea, the NHS app back in December of 2019 had just over 192,000 users when they were accessing a range of NHS services on their smartphone or tablets. And this could have been from ordering prescriptions, booking and cancelling GP appointments. If we fast forward to December of last year, we can see that there were 192,000, or sorry, 1.9 million users using the same app. That's a growth of 912%. And the number of repeat prescription requests increased from 495%, so from just over 45,000 in January 2020 to 273,000 in November 2020. And the number of patient record views by 321% in the same period. So what we're starting to see is that digital transformation is not an option. It is in fact a must. Digital transformation reshapes the public sector in a number of positive ways. It kicks into gear new processes and product development, and they're moving ahead at a breakneck speed. Unfortunately, security considerations can often be left behind. And security is starting to regain a priority in these strategies, and CISOs are dispersing security responsibility throughout the organizations. One cause for the added risk is the increased reliance on third parties. I think a number of years ago, everything was controlled and managed by the individual government departments. And the general feeling among IT was that if they weren't managing it, it wasn't secure. But as we've seen recently, there is an awful lot more increased reliance on third parties to provide additional services. And what we've started to see is a lot of organizations don't have cyber risk management programs in place for these third parties. With cloud in particular, this is easy to achieve as there are built-in security features from the cloud providers that can be utilized. And it's important to remember that cloud companies under the GDPR regulations are considered to be data processors. So it's very much in the cloud company's interest to help you manage these risks. And the teams that they have behind them, behind the cloud companies in terms of DevOps and security people, are more than happy to help you manage and mitigate these risks, because they are under the cosh, as it were. And given the legacy estates across governments, the importance of cybersecurity cannot be overemphasized. And one of the key points for this is that cybersecurity is not just an IT team issue; it's a board issue, and so it needs to be managed proactively. So just to give you some idea of statistics for 2020 in terms of cybersecurity breaches. So 95% security breaches are caused by human error. 88% of organizations worldwide experienced spear phishing attacks in 2019. 68% of business leaders feel their cybersecurity risks are increasing. Data breaches exposed 36 billion records in 2020, of which 86% were financially motivated. 45% were via hacking, 17% involved malware, and 22% were phishing attacks. So cybersecurity is something we all have to take seriously. On the ICO website, the ICO themselves over the past number of years have issued many enforcement notices and fines to public sector organizations. And in some cases, these fines may have been more costly than implementing the necessary cybersecurity. I think it's important to remember that according to the ICO website, all products that are internet facing have to have security by design in either the product or the service offering. Nobody is beyond the reach of the ICO. And I'm sure that all organizations on this call would much rather not get notification that they are about to be audited by the ICO when a breach occurs. There's quite an interesting section on the ICO website called Action We've Taken, and this lists all of the enforcement that they've taken, all decision notices, and some of the audits. And you might be surprised by some of the public sector organizations that are available, that are on this list. So just to go through very briefly some of the main types of cyber attacks. There is denial of service. And we've seen a very large increase in denial of service attacks during COVID-19. And a lot of people are exploiting the pandemic by targeting healthcare organizations, education establishments, and also government agencies. Attacks on educational and administrative web resources tripled in the first quarter of 2020 compared with the same quarter in 2019. And Kaspersky, the well-known security company, have predicted that corporate infrastructure, such as VPN gateways, will receive more DDoS attacks as the shift to remote working becomes the new normal. Organizations should disperse assets to avoid presenting an attractive target for DDoS attacks. So for example, servers should be in different data centers on different networks and ensuring no single point of failure. You can deploy hardware that handles DDoS attacks or employ DDoS mitigation providers. Ransomware, I think, is something we're all quite familiar with. It's basically a harmful virus that infiltrates network systems, often via unscreened email, software downloads, and can paralyze all of the network functionality. During the WannaCry, which is probably one of the most famous ones, ransomware attack on NHS systems, over a third of England's NHS trusts were disrupted, and nearly 7,000 NHS appointments had to be cancelled as a result of it. Data breaches. These can be terribly malicious when criminals hack into network systems to steal sensitive information, where information is leaked accidentally, it's lost, or it's emails to the wrong individual, or it's placed in the public domain, either deliberately or accidentally. And again, remember that your cloud provider is considered to be a data processor under the guidelines. So it is very much in their interest to ensure you are best protected. So how to mitigate DDoS attacks? Now, this is obviously a much deeper subject, and I could go on for a long time about the technologies that you can actually deploy to prevent DDoS attacks. However, just to cover some of the basics. Minimizing the surface area that can be attacked basically limits the options for attackers and allows you to build protections at a single place. So, the general rule is don't expose any applications or resources to ports, protocols, or applications from where they don't expect to get any communication. So, for example, you can lock them down to internal networks only and not allow any external access. You can place all your resources behind content distribution networks or load balancers and restrict all the internet traffic to certain parts of your infrastructure, like your database servers. Use firewalls or access control lists to control what traffic reaches your applications. You also need very much to plan for scale with DDoS attacks. So right now, if you had a DDoS attack and the applications you're running are only on small servers, you need to mitigate for large-scale attacks. And these can be both at the server level, they can also be on your connectivity level. So, for example, you might only use 25 megabytes connectivity speed for certain applications. However, in a DDoS attack, you might need to scale that up quite dramatically. So you need to make sure that your hosting provider has the bandwidth capacity to be able to absorb and mitigate these attacks. So you need to make sure you've got, as I said, redundant connectivity. On your web applications, you can, again, these content distribution networks or smart DNS resolution services, these all provide an additional layer of network infrastructure for resolving DNS queries from locations that are often closer to your end users. Your server capacities. So it's very important that your servers are capable of scaling up or down on the resources required very quickly. It's also common to use load balancers to continually monitor and shift loads between resources to prevent overloading on any one particular resource. So you really need to know what is normal and abnormal traffic. So as soon as you see a spike in your normal traffic, it basically alerts you to start taking actions and looking into it quite quickly. And again, you should be deploying firewalls for more sophisticated application attacks. You can use things like web application firewalls against attacks like SQL injection or cross-site request forgery. It's always important with all these things to move these protections as far to the input points on your network as possible. If they're coming down to the servers or down to the endpoints, the amount of effort required to remove and to stop them if they've got to the endpoints, it's almost too late. You need to stop them as far out in the network as you possibly can. Ransomware, again, a lot of these things are common knowledge, and I'm sure we all do them by default, but sometimes it doesn't hurt to just remind ourselves of them. Make regular backups. Ideally, backups should be done from privileged access workstations, which are only available to very, very few people. One of the big things with ransomware is they not only come in and disrupt what's available in the live data or the live environments, but they will also look to where your backups are stored and make sure that they corrupt or encrypt those backups and password protect them, so that you can't just go back and restore an old backup and get your services back up and running as quickly as possible. So again, backups should be controlled and only accessed by a very limited number of machines, and they should also be encrypted. Use multi-factor authentication where possible into critical resources. Username and passwords, we all know passwords. I think there's plenty of statistics out there as to how passwords have been hacked multiple times, and there are websites showing whose passwords have been hacked. In some cases, they might be old passwords, but that password might not have been changed on multiple servers. Use privileged access management solutions. Remove the need for administrators to directly access high-value backup systems. Preventing malware from being delivered and spreading. As I mentioned a few moments ago, you need to put this protection, and I'll come to this later on in the presentation, at the entry point. So, for example, on your email gateways, on your web gateways, you really want to filter and only allow certain file types you would expect to receive. So the obvious one would be how many people allow exe files back into the network again. I think everybody knows that exes were probably one of the simplest ways many years ago to spread malicious payloads throughout the organization. Block websites that are known to be malicious. And there's plenty of products available on the market that do the anti-spam and antivirus, not just on the email side, but also on the website, to ensure that people don't visit not just inappropriate websites, but websites that are known to be malicious. Mail filtering, and the NCSC's mail check platform is very good, and it's a free resource that you can also get from that. As I mentioned earlier, internet security gateways. Again, if somebody is going to a website or downloading certain files from certain websites, there are some very good internet security gateways that will tell you that this file has only been downloaded by 10 people in the last 3 months, or it's known to be dangerous. And again, that can stop an awful lot of people from downloading it. To go back to the point I made earlier, is that 95% of breaches are caused by human error. So the more protections that you have in place here, which are warning users that this might be malicious or it's known to be malicious, it's a much greater chance they won't actually click on that link or download that file. Like on browsing, you can either do it one of two ways. You can only allow certain employees access to the internet for internal resources. They might only have intranet access rather than internet access. And you might allow certain other parts of the organization access to limited web resources. And again, support people might have access to everything because they might need to download patches for multiple products from multiple systems. Data breaches. Again, make sure that your software is updated and patched regularly. The amount of times that we've all read in the papers about, people breaking in to outdated software where people haven't updated, even something as simple as their Windows operating system since they first installed it 3 years ago. You must make sure that the software is updated. I know this is more difficult now as people are working remotely. Again, but it's something you need to press upon those people working remotely who have corporate or again, their own personal devices that they're using to work from home. Do carry out regular vulnerability assessments. And again, your cloud provider is more than happy to recommend a list of pen testers. I know in zsah we've had a lot of requests in from customers saying, will you please check our the servers that you're managing and maintaining for us? And the answer is we can, but we don't recommend it because it's a bit like correcting your own homework. So we would always recommend, and we maintain a list of partners, our own partners, that carry out pen testing for our customers on a regular basis. So you have to consider all aspects such as data storage, remote access for employees, and make sure that all the policies and procedures are up to date and adequate. Encryption and data backup. Well, yes, all your backup should be encrypted, and nearly all of the backup providers, well, certainly all the cloud backup providers, will always encrypt your data on backup. Personal data on company laptops is something that's been around for a long time, and it should by default in all corporate laptops or devices where there is personal data, PII, PCI type data, should be encrypted in case that laptop is lost or stolen. I think we've all probably, well, I certainly know in my career, a number of people might have lost laptops over the years, leaving them in taxis or restaurants, or they've gone missing in airports. So it's important that all work laptops are encrypted, because if a laptop that contains corporate data does go missing, then you are actually obliged to notify the ICO within 72 hours. Try not to use backup tapes. They can be lost or stolen. I would always suggest that data be backed up using remote services to the internet. Staff training and awareness. It's always, sometimes you have to repeat the message a number of times to staff just to impress upon them how dangerous it is, clicking on links and emails, downloading files, uploading files to the internet. So you really have to train staff to follow best practices, to be aware of the importance of data security and how to avoid the mistakes that can lead to breaches. And a key part of this would be an awareness of sensitive data, or what constitutes sensitive data. And so, the awareness of it and security should be part of corporate culture. I mentioned it earlier, is you need to ensure that your vendors and partners are also maintaining high data protection standards. So when you're working with other companies that might be handling your customers' data, make sure that they have adequate systems in place to protect the data. If you're looking at the data, yes, you are the data controller, but how many of your partners have access to that data, or how many other organizations process that data? You really need to have checkpoints in place to make sure that that organization has been through the same strict security that you have deployed to your own internal systems and your own internal data. And again, try and use a third party to carry out these checks again on any third parties that you're working with. A data security expert is going to advise on the best solution specific to each company. Again, that's the advantage about using third parties in this, is because they're not just focused on one specific product and what one specific product can do for you is they have access to a number of security products that can help you maintain from your company's perspective. Not a one size does not fit all model. So sometimes these security plans have to be individual and customized. So you need to, I guess one of the key points, and we've seen this time and time again, is that companies do put in, or public sector organizations have put in, mail gateways, web gateways, they put all the security practices in, but one of the first things they haven't done at the very beginning is they actually don't understand where secure data actually resides on their networks. And so I think one of the first things that people should do is, and again, there are tools out there, and we have partners in our network that will basically come in and they will literally search through all network, all devices, and look for PCI or look for PII type data. I think that once you know where that data is stored, then you can do something with it. But even, for example, if somebody sends you an email, let's say they send you a file with employee data, and then the person that receives that circulates that same email among 3 or 4 different people, all of a sudden you've got 5 or 6 different copies of that a document that contains secure data in your organization. And you need to make sure that you're retaining that data for the right reasons. Is how many copies of it, where is it, and then what is your what's your policy on disposing of that data within a set period of time, data retention. The National Cybersecurity Centre have some interesting statistics. They've basically, what they're saying is these new cyber threats are increasing on a daily basis, and local public sector organizations don't always have the large budgets to compete with the private sector in terms of attracting and retaining skilled security professionals. And as a result, many of these local IT managers, the security responsibilities have fallen to them, and they need to train and upskill and keep up with the latest threats and defense techniques and the tools to support these efforts. But the layering of cost to resource the security team and provide and maintain the tools necessary to undertake all these functions and maintain the skill sets and external certifications sometimes could be deemed to be commercially unviable. And so using a third party to perform these tasks can sometimes make an awful lot more commercial sense. And to do this, because you might not need to have these checks done all the time, 24/7. Sometimes you might only need that skill set for 3 or 4 tasks a year, and it doesn't make sense sometimes from a commercial perspective to have those skills in-house. And what we're starting to see is there's an awful lot more companies who are outsourcing security skills, so monitoring, analysis, migration. There's an awful lot more managed security service providers springing up in the market, and I'm sure that not a week goes by in your inbox somebody isn't inviting you to a presentation on their new managed security offering or their security operations center. I mean, it's becoming increasingly obvious that public sector organizations are a prime target for cyber criminals. And the recent pandemic will invariably impact IT and specifically security budgets. With a customer-centric approach to the initial identification of these vulnerabilities, then you can start to go out and MSP can help you backfill the security skills gaps should they be needed. Again, the ICO has on their website has a number of resources that are available, and I think it's always good to be cognizant of what they expect. So if you did ever have occasion to be audited by the Information Commissioner or somebody made a complaint against you, and obviously the ICO is going to come in and ask, if you follow the guidelines that the ICO has set out in terms of maintaining a cybersecurity environment, is that if you've complied with most of these, the audit is not going to be terribly painful. However, if you haven't followed the rules and the guidelines, it could prove to be quite painful. So I would suggest that you look at the resources available from the ICO, and they will be able to help. So some of the obstacles in building cybersecurity, it's budget. Budget is obviously the first one, and it's the one that is probably most spoken about. IT managers are increasingly finding themselves tasked to do more with less. And budget cuts historically over the past number of years, and the budget cuts that are probably going to be coming at the end of this year and early next year, basic data security measures will have been missed in the previous couple of years, and they will probably continue to be missed in the next couple of years due to the rush that we have, that's been brought in bringing these new applications to the forefront as quick as possible. I think the WannaCry attack that crippled the NHS I was talking about earlier was spread due to a failure to patch a known exploit. Again, it's budget constraints just didn't have the people to do it. As I mentioned earlier, the skills gap, cybersecurity skills gap is widening. An industry estimate suggests there could be 1.8 million unfilled jobs in the information security industry by 2022. With fewer graduates having the necessary skills, the government has actually started to take action with initiatives such as the Cyber Schools Programme, which does aim to provide young people with cyber skills by 2021. However, this will be a light touch, and we're always going to have need for people with a much deeper knowledge of it. And so we need a complete overhaul in how cybersecurity talent is developed and how it can play a key part in the public sector from cyber attacks. But we need to focus on the skills building now to provide immediate prevention, or at least decrease the risk of breaches in the meantime. Many organizations see cybersecurity as an unnecessary cost with a minimal return on investment, which is an oversight, especially for public sector organizations looking to reduce costs. I think when you consider that a medical record is worth 10 times as much as a credit card number on the black market, it's no surprise that the Identity Theft Resource Centre's end-of-year data breach report showed that over 34% of all breaches worldwide are hitting the healthcare industry. And so that's literally just people stealing information for money. Now, again, within the public sector is that I think the budgets you have are going towards services that you have to provide by default. So, why spend your time, working on cybersecurity and GDPR when you could be, working towards what you do best? And this is really where working with third parties and working with your cloud provider or your other third-party providers really comes in. It allows you to do what you do best and let them come in and just tell you about the security as you're developing a product. Let them come in with an input to do it. So very briefly, I want to talk about some of the partners that zsah currently work with in the cybersecurity space. So very briefly, zsah, just who we are. We aren't a recent startup. We've been around for over 19 years. We were doing cloud before the cloud term came about, where we were racking and stacking tower servers and sharing them across multiple users. So over the last 20 years, we've seen an awful lot of change in the market and obviously security implications that go with that. And we are aware that organizations do struggle to extract the maximum value from their investments and their assets. And we're extremely willing to help organizations realize how they can maximize the return on investment that they're getting. Moving from a CapEx to an OpEx model. And again, because we've kind of seen a lot of mistakes made, is that when people come to us and say, look, this is kind of what I want to do, is we can certainly help and provide an awful lot of the gotchas to avoid in advance of them rolling that out. So I do just briefly want to talk about one of our partners, a company called ClearSwift. ClearSwift were a UK organization they're based out in Reading, and they've been around for an awful long time. They were recently acquired by a US company called Help Systems, who have made multiple acquisitions in the last while. But ClearSwift themselves are cybersecurity and data loss prevention specialists. And I'll talk a little bit more about their secure email gateway and their secure web gateway now in 1 second. zsah and ClearSwift have been working together for nearly 5 years now. a lot of ClearSwift's customers traditionally would have had secure email gateways and secure web gateways on-prem, and they would have been managing them themselves. However, for various reasons, they have decided that they want those now hosted and managed in the cloud. So zsah and ClearSwift came together many years ago, and we now offer a completely bundled solution for actually a lot of government agencies, whereby we do the hosting and we take care of the security patching, and ClearSwift take care of the management. So they are fully managed on behalf of the customer. Customer still has access to it. They can come in, they change their own policies. They're responsible for the policies. But all the other security aspects around the cloud and the management of is we take care between the two of us. So customers are getting a full service. Oh. Right, so ClearSwift Secure Email Gateway. It provides powerful protection of an organization's email data around both inbound cyber attacks and outbound data loss prevention. Email is still the #1 method for communication with most organizations, and it's become one of the top sources for cyber criminals to infiltrate your systems and take hold of your critical data. So what a secure email does is it protects against known and unknown malware, but also including advanced threats, including phishing. IT teams need to ensure that information being shared on email, both into the organization and out of the organization, is not only secure, but it's also appropriate and compliant. And ClearSwift have an unparalleled level of inspection, granular policy controls to ensure that only the right data gets in and the right data leaves your organization. It can be standalone, or it can work with, Lotus Notes. It can work with, well, Lotus Notes, sorry, it's probably going back a few years now. Office 365, Google Works, Exchange. It'll work with any SMTP-based mail service. So again, yeah, basically what it does is it stops the threats coming in. And again, their secure email gateway doesn't come with just a single antivirus engine, for example. It comes with multiple antivirus engines. So if one engine misses it, then the second one will more than likely pick it up. The web gateway, it basically gives organizations the ability to enforce internet security, again, on web traffic and web-based applications. It can prevent accidental data leaks. So as I mentioned earlier, a huge percentage of data leaks are caused by human error. People attaching the wrong file to outbound email or copying the wrong person on an email. There are multiple examples of this on the ICO website. So, an example of this, I think, if you've got, if you're looking at your inbox and you've got 150 unread emails, not that any of you would, and all of a sudden to your inbox pops up an email saying so and so would like to recall an email, a very high majority of people would go, oh, I wonder why, and that would be the first email that would read. I think it's very, very easy to attach the wrong document to an email or to copy the wrong person on an email. And even going back further than that, I think on the ICO website, there's multiple instances of people faxing highly sensitive information to the wrong person as well. And we're not going to talk about faxing today. But what the secure web gateway does, it can prevent these accidental data leaks. So people uploading documents to maybe personal web servers as a way, let's say, even outside the public sector, people could be emailing a customer list just before they leave if they're, they want to be able to use after. So companies need to protect their own assets internally. So again, the secure web gateway, can monitor web traffic, it can prevent access to inappropriate or malicious sites. But it can also restrict access. Let's say, for example, as an organization, you might want to allow access to things like YouTube or Sky News or Facebook, but they're only allowed it during lunch hour. It's not just about non-work appropriate websites. So, so using an SWG does allow you to balance the need about protecting on critical information, but also allowing you the flexibility whereby things aren't tied down so tightly that people aren't able to do that work. And if you've actually deployed both the email web gateway and the web gateway from ClearSwift, the policies that you've set as an organization can be shared across both products. So what else do we have in zsah that might help you? We have, to come back to email again, we have a full email encryption service. It follows all of the industry standards, so SMIME, PGP, PDF. Again, SMIME and PGP are probably slightly more technical terms. PDF encryption has become quite popular recently, and I think that an awful lot more individuals are used to receiving their salary slips for protected PDF. So what PDF encryption allows you to do is allows you to take an email plus attachments, wrap them into a PDF and send them on to the recipient. And then you can basically send the password onto the recipient separately. You can do it by two-factor authentication, Google Authenticator. You can SMS them the password. The last line there is emails are also digitally signed. What I mean by digital signatures is that when you receive the email in your inbox, there's what looks like a little red rosette in the top right-hand corner. And what this means is the email really has come from the person it's on the sender's list. I think that with spoofing emails, I think we've heard so much about is if you're using email encryption, is your customers know that the email really has come from you, so there is no spoofing involved. And digital signatures have been legal in the UK, I think, since it's June or July of 2019 or 2018, maybe even. It's something around that. So it's the whole non-repudiation as well. And again, it allows you to protect your corporate assets. So again, you can, even if you're sending emails internally, again, you can also encrypt them on an internal basis as well. And so it's becoming an awful lot more popular now, especially on the digital signatures, again, for the whole non-repudiation side of the business. And zsah, we have, as I mentioned before, so not only do zsah have our own private cloud platform, and we have DCs we've got one in London, one in Manchester. We've got stuff on the East Coast of America. We've got stuff in Middle America. We have hosting in Singapore, South Africa, and I think we're building another 3 at the moment as well. So we do have our own very much private cloud. It does give customers an awful lot more a degree of security, and also this is becoming a little more pertinent now after Brexit, because now you can guarantee to your customers that sort of data held or health records held on UK citizens will only ever be stored in the UK, for example, and nobody from outside the UK has access to them, as you might not be able to guarantee with some of the public cloud providers. So in the public sector, okay, we are a number of the government frameworks, as you can see from this slide here, DOS frameworks. I'm not going to go through them all. Bramble Hub, and we have a number of government customers. Obviously, we can't list all of them here because most of them would prefer us not to mention their names especially for security reasons more than anything else. They don't want to to advertise the fact that their data is stored, which is absolutely fine. We will always respect the wishes from a security point of view, which is the purpose of this presentation in the first place. So like I said, we have been around for an awful long time. We've got multiple years of experience within the organization from our DevOps team, and we'll be more than happy to work with you and to answer any of your questions. So that's me kind of wrapped up. I hope I've kept reasonably on time, Nina.
Okay, so thank you. Great to learn from your views on cybersecurity, David. We are a bit running over time, but I think we still have time for one question. So so the question would be, as you might be aware, after the lockdown, many companies will adopt the hybrid working mode. So in that case, how can we check if the employees' mobile devices and personal computers are secure?
BYOD and personal devices are well, especially the BYOD devices are always a little trickier because they aren't considered to be corporate assets. But one of the things I would suggest is that there should always be guidelines. If If it's a corporate laptop, it makes it much easier, is you can basically force certain security policies on corporate assets. But if it's their personal device, and we've all heard stories probably recently about, you know, a single device being shared among multiple people in the same household, it's used for work, it's used for school work, it's always going to be slightly different. In situations like that, I would always recommend is that if they're accessing corporate assets, is they connect to all corporate devices over a secure VPN. Is no documents are stored locally, and they can only work over a VPN to those assets. Create as many policies as you can. Make sure their passwords are up to date. And if they're using, you know, obviously everybody's using unsecured, you know, home networks, and the company has no control over them. But just basically make sure that you're doing as much as you can and asking what type of devices they're using, who else has access to that device, and making sure that they aren't actually downloading and storing corporate documents or government documents on their laptop, because in theory that could be considered to be a data breach.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, David. Very well explained. And also thank you so much for sharing some useful online resources for cybersecurity with us. This webinar session also comes to an end. We also have blog posts around cybersecurity, so please do not hesitate to visit our website. You will find some handy resources around cybersecurity and digital transformation there. If you have more questions around data and cybersecurity, feel free to reach out to us at info@zsah.net, and we will get right back to you. So thank you. I hope you all enjoyed the session and have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.